Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, in our ongoing study in Hegel. And we've got a very special lesson today. I decided to go back to Hegel's original source material. I wanted to go back to the original Phenomenology of Spirit. And I want to present the ending to the Phenomenology of Spirit. This is the conclusion to Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit, and it concludes with the realm of absolute spirit, which is for Hegel the realm of positing. And I've always told people that have wondered that the key to understanding Hegel, I already have a summary chart up of the entire phenomenology, and hopefully you have gone through that a few times. But the key to Hegel is always to understand his realm of positing. It's something you don't get from anyone else. And we're going to talk about the realm of positing, especially in this lesson. If you go to the summary chart that we already did, the right half of that chart is the realm of positing. It is the realm of absolute spirit. And Hegel is, in his Phenomenology of Spirit, that's where he's going. He's taking the reader to the goal of living in the realm of absolute spirit, to live and participate in the realm of positing. Let's take a look at the three headings before we get going. Okay, you'll notice on the chart that we're going to be taking a look at, because Hegel presents all truth in three moments always, we're going to look at the positing of a determination, the recognition of individuality, and the return moment of universality. So we're going to go from determination to individuality to universality. That's going to be the triad Hegel will employ at the conclusion of his phenomenology. And I know, let me just offer a comment here. I know Hegel's philosophy. It took me 3 years of intense study to learn his philosophy, but even with fully comprehending his philosophy, I have found by doing this lesson, I still cannot go through Hegel's original work any quicker than 5 pages a day. Hegel is comprehensible. He's accused of being the most incomprehensible philosopher who has ever lived, but Hegel is comprehensible. But what people have to realize is that you have to study Hegel slower than any other person you read. Never go more than 5 pages a day. And you're talking about the conclusion being in 479 to 494, so it's going to take you a while to get through the phenomenology, but he is comprehensible. But you have a whole new definition of slow, comprehensive reading. So having said all of that, now I can tell you that for Hegel, the ending is always the beginning. So even though the ending is always the beginning, so even though we're looking at the conclusion to the phenomenology, this is a good place to start if you're going to study Hegel's phenomenology. So let's go to block 1 and we'll get started with the positing of a determination, the externalization of self-consciousness as positing and its syllogism. The positing of self-consciousness. The self posits its positive meaning for self-consciousness itself and as the unity of being for itself. That is, even though it's posited, it still exists as that which is taken back into the self. In other words, it's an internal externality. It's a hinge moment that hinges subjectivity and objectivity together. The posited object exists as implicit spiritual object. Therefore, self-consciousness posits its sign model of meaning. You posit a picture, okay? It's picture thinking. As a unity of being that is taken back into the self as an internal externality. Okay? Now, if that did not make sense, then go through it again, and again. Get this first section down, because that is especially true, that what we posit as an internal externality. 2, or block 1, note 2, recognition of positive objective self-consciousness. It is a going out for another, and it is a return for itself. It is a going out for another and a return for itself as the model form of understanding, or remember our summary is katanoesis. Therefore, we have the following syllogism. Positing. The universal is posited as a determination. Recognition. Determination is suspended through the action of the individuality of recognition. Okay, so consciousness knows the returning object as self-consciousness itself. Knowing is a coming to be process. It is a returning shape of consciousness that we take into ourselves. Hegel calls this pure knowing, where each series of shapes will eventually be brought together by self-consciousness. So, block 1, put a circle around note 2, C. There's your syllogism, there's your logic. Positing, recognition, and return. Positing, recognition, and return. So we've looked at the logic of positing in 1. Now we're going to look at the essence of recognition in block 2. And it's it's recognition as an act of individuality. Block 2. The recognition of individuality. We have the knowledge of the essence of being. Individuality recognizes that which is for the ethical self, that which is for the moral self. We are trying to gain the recognition from other self-conscious selves that is, the recognizing self is a moral self-consciousness, a recognition of that which is absolutely essential. We reach pure willing and pure knowing. Recognition as pure willing and knowing. Essential being lies behind unessential being. The infinite lies behind the finite. It is there, but it needs to be perceived spiritually. Therefore, the recognizing moral consciousness lets the determinate go freely as that which has been superseded. Recognition reaches the level of noesis, the level of concept. Go back to the summary chart. Other within other self-conscious selves. That is a definition of recognition. Other self-conscious selves reach the level of noesis. The self is now prepared to take the transformed positing back into the self as a return moment. Conscience reaches pure certainty of itself. The self reaches pure knowledge. Go back to the summary chart. The self reaches sun idese. The self reaches sun idese. Hegel calls this moment the moment of the reconciliation of spirit. It is the reconciliation of spirit. Now we're ready to move into return moment, which is a return of universality in block 3. Okay, block 3. Reconciliation of spirit in the return moment. As objective religious spirit, but also as subjective imprinted mind set. In the Greek, that is phronesis. It is recognized as true being for the self in the form of a returning shape of consciousness. Reconciliation as a returning shape of consciousness, as being in and for itself, as absolute essential content out of the event of absolute knowing. The conclusion to the phenomenology is the section on absolute knowing. Consciousness attains unto its genuine, true spiritual shape. So reconciliation as being in and for itself. Absolute unification is reached. It is a return of picture thinking in a sign model within self-consciousness itself. It's a returning reflection into the self, a unified but differentiated sign model in a unified but differentiated sign model of what? That which has attained unto the level of concept. This is precisely, absolutely, this is the conclusion to Hegel's phenomenology. It's only 15 pages, but you have to read it so slowly. Expect to read this chapter at a minimum at least 3 full days. At least 3 full days. But again, if you really want the logic behind the final chapter in Hegel's phenomenology, block 1, note 2C, 1, 2, and 3. We've just looked at the triad of positing, a determination, the recognition of individuality, and the return moment of a revised universality. Remember, that's a return of a revised universality. And if you remember our lesson on the summary of the phenomenology, this never ends. The ending takes you back to the beginning, and then you move toward the ending, and then you're back to the beginning. That's why this ending should be the beginning of your attempt to read and comprehend Hegel's phenomenology. This is where you begin. You begin at the ending. Now, a theologian that understands that perfectly is Jürgen Moltmann. Every book, every essay ever written by Jürgen Moltmann always is the end is the beginning. The end is the beginning. Eschatology is the first doctrine in all of Hegel's work. He begins with eschatology always. Hegel begins with eschatology. This ending is the beginning to comprehending the summary chart we've already studied. This ending is the beginning. So I say, comprehend this summary, go back to the overall summary, go back through the overall summary about 10 times or so. I had to live with Hegel for 3 years to comprehend him. He's difficult. He's not impossible. He is difficult. but you have to read him very, very slowly. That's going to wrap up this closing chapter on Hegel's phenomenology from 1807.